Apple as like my leading stock today to give us kind of like a direction towards where price will be at. So one of the first things I'd like to do in the pre-market session is like identify what has relative volume, right? So as you guys may see here, we got Apple and we got, right here more in the industrial sector with, Caterpillar showing relative volume, right? So I'm going to focus here on Apple. The reason why I'm focusing here on Apple is because, earlier we were in this tight zone here in this 4 hour time frame, right? So as you guys can see, now we popped off. So if you guys could please reference the watch list, I posted the levels when we, prior to this breakout. But as you guys can see, this is a prime example of how to be able to confluence trade. So to me, especially on a day like today, right? You post CPI and we are in bottom ranges, right? Like, we are in the bottom ranges in more of a macro zone, whereas theoretically, we still have room to go all the way back down to, 592. But as you guys may know, the market does not, it's not knowing what move it's going to make, it's knowing how to react when the move is made, right? So for the most part, I do feel it will be a pretty, good open, but I don't think anyone should get like, super emotional towards where price will deviate. Intraday, maybe in the power hour session, you might have more of opportunity. It's just this is a reminder that, I don't think trading options past 7:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is actually even lucrative, right? So again, key base area here, 262.40. Again, if we do hold this up into open, I do feel particularly bullish, right? So again, this is a key level to watch for, going into this market session. So, I am watching Apple. If Apple does hold this level, right? So perhaps if you guys are looking to do a bounce strategy, wait for Apple to come back to 262.40 and watch to see if it actually catches bids there, right? Again, when it's back to this area, just expect tighter ranges in the market, right? If Apple does lose this 259.80 zone, I personally feel that the market can get relatively bearish if we lose this level on Apple. So again, Apple serves as a great gauge. As long as we're trading between this area here, we'll get choppier price action. But as you guys can see, kind of getting like a bottoming vibe here. But, if you guys want to take more bounce strategies, just wait for us to retest at 262.40 area. So, so Apple serves as a great gauge. We're going to go ahead and discuss the volatility index. So, volatility index is above $20. So if you do want a long, just keep that in mind. Especially when you take longs above $20, just, if you do take longs above $20 on the VIX, just make sure that there's acceleration. When I say acceleration, it's like, price is moving fast on the VIX, right? I actually like to look at the UVXY at the same time, because even though this might be oscillating above 20, it might mean that it might be weak. I'm going to be looking at the opening ranges here on the UVXY, right? So again, we need back below 20 or this back below this monthly open, 1994 here. I like $20 more of a psychological area. And I do want to see the VIX fade back below $20 if you want to see more aggressive upside moves. Now, key levels on the VIX, right? So again, yesterday, first got faked out on some ODT lottos. Not much size, right? But, I saw an increase in volume, right? And yes, although we did catch a move back up here, right? Relatively speaking, we were caught up in this intraday chop because there was no follow through in volume, right? So again, this was the choppier zones yesterday. So just keeping in mind that the market definitely does need above 605. Okay, so if you want pickup in price, right, it's above 605. So if you guys are looking for, that's the ideal strike price, right? 605. So that's an ideal level. It's an ideal strike price, and that's an ideal level for us to hold up above that zone if you want to see tickers go higher. Now, Amazon could present an opportunity here. I'm in my $240 calls for September, but the $200 calls, as long as, as the QQQ holds up above that 602.30 area that I'm talking about, Amazon $200 calls can do relatively well, which I will be looking for, right? I had a losing trade this week. It's been, 2 weeks, been having losing trades with swing trades. But I personally think that, Palantir here, despite it being, I think if we do get aggressive, I think this could start shooting back up, and it has wider ranges to recover. So for the most part, If we do hold up 602.30, perhaps the 130 calls can be good, or the 132 calls here in Palantir. I'm going to be focused a little bit more on Amazon, some other stuff. If I do see an ideal entry now, in terms of the sector here, right? You look at this, you look at the pre-market session here, right? You can see that, the sector itself is looking good, right? Oracle actually has strength. So the sector looks good, right? And we're primed for a pop here, especially for those who want to trade ODT here on Palantir, could move really good today, right? But key level to look for. And if you guys need to cut, right? If this doesn't hold, is that we have to hold. That's non-negotiable. 602.30 has to hold for this Palantir trade to go into our favor this morning. I'm going to go ahead and open up this chat box here. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask questions. So any questions here? We are going to go dive into the the tape reading session now. But any questions here on the tickers that we are looking for this morning? Okay, cool. Perfect. You guys are asking a question. I love it. I'm gonna do ODT. I did this week expiration. I'm in the 140 calls as well, right? I do have 140 calls as well, but I mean, this is the bummer part. Last week I made 3K with Amazon on the swing account, but last week I just something told me that Amazon has room for 198, and I kind of had like an idea that the market was gonna sell off, like but again, it's one of those things that you start to get bullish and in areas where the QQ comes back. Like I started getting bullish at around 612, right? So, and it did this accelerate back to this 598 area, this pre-market session, right? Well, day low yesterday was 602, right? So it's like 10-point off extension. But what I wanted to play with that was this sector. I'm really bullish on this sector here. I see a lot of rotation coming into this next cycle into the software infrastructure sector, right? Such as Microsoft, Oracle, PLTR. Yes, if we do get strength, IWM looks good too. Let's actually identify IWM. And I'm going to go ahead and do the tape readings in just a bit. But IWM, so think of IWM like, like the strength play, right? And then the strength play meaning that, that when the market rips or like market trend days to the uptrend, this will extend higher fast, right? So, this is a small cap sector, more likely to get manipulated. But, for the most part, we do have higher ranges here, but we need insane amount of strength, right? And to me, it's like, I wouldn't touch IWM calls unless you actually see the QQ above that 605. You could do 604.80 zone, but if you want to confirm or follow through, the QQ has to hold up that area. And then, Phil, if you want to, sometimes I get it. People get it, we're trading as, like for example, right? QQ could be trading at, 601 and you're aiming for 602 on the QQ. And, you assess your risk reward instead of getting an IWM calls. But really, IWM won't activate until, QQ reclaims that 605 area. So it just becomes like a little bit more dangerous below 605, right? But because we theoretically we do have room to come back down to this 592 area. We do, right? The VIX is still holding $20, and you cannot, you cannot, because at the end of the day, right? And it's something that I did discuss, right? You know, yes, we'll look at the tape readings, but like like here, right here, I still see, IWM still has room to come back down to 255. Now I'm looking at it at 247.5, right? Just keep in mind this gap fill here. So that's why it's very important that you get no emotions. And if you're looking to trade longs, we're just holding a level. Just confirm you're holding a level. So, my loss this week, and I'd like to share my losses too. I gloat about my wins, right? But I also, mention my losses. And my loss this week was due to the fact that I was not patient for us to, like the IWM could be a great example to a correlation of my loss this week with Palantir. So, my level on QQ was 618.60 for liquidity activation, right? This week we never hit it. The top was 616. Right, $2 off, but because I wanted to get in a little earlier than the liquidity activation area. So sometimes those trades are higher risk, right? Sometimes they pay out really good, right? But in this week's scenario, we never reclaimed the liquidity activation area, and that is why Palantir sold off the way it did. If the QQ holds up this 598 level, holds up the 602.30, yes, Palantir will go up. Palantir will go up for sure if QQ reclaims that 604 area. So those are, just like how to be able to gauge it. Now, if you want to understand if whether we will chop or not, right? Like I mentioned, Apple's going to be a key indicator, right? As long as Apple is trading between, the levels of 602 point here, I'll go ahead and draw them out right here, right? So, and this is something you keep it on watch, right? Even if you have to have sometimes like even having like when you're reading volume and stuff, my biggest recommendation is even getting two monitors, right? Sometimes when you add so much noise to your charts, that noise can definitely, um, make skew because you're looking at so many things at once. So it's like you have to train yourself to avoid the noise and like because I've had calls with several of you guys and where yes, you guys have an idea of what your edge is, but sometimes it's like adding new things and while you're like adjusting to like adding that new thing or adjusting to like how to be able to read it correctly, right? And and sometimes when you're looking at new things, it's better to not even trade it, right? Just back test and like see if that, how you could best interpret that data. But in terms of Apple, right? As long as Apple is trading between the 262.40 zone and its 260 area, right? Expect choppier market conditions, right? Either Apple breaks below this area, bearish. Either Apple holds above this area, bullish, right? So again, yes, second monitor I actually have three monitors, right? So it's like, like I'm looking at so many stuff, right? Like, obviously I do the tape readings. I like doing them on NinjaTrader, super the market. But yeah, so right here, I like showing it to you guys on TOS because it's something that we all use, and because like broker fees and all these extra subscriptions do add up, right? So yeah, look, Craig said he has four. He doesn't think it's enough for real. I feel you on that, Craig. But okay, so now in this next part, let's go ahead and let's read the tape. Okay. So when I read the tape, I'm looking for like more of attractive volume nodes and where price level could be a little bit more, successful, right? So, PLTR 7 days out probably be cheaper this morning, right? Keep in mind that the more contract, it might be that, I'd rather just wait for Tuesday, right? Keep in mind that markets are closed on Monday. Okay. I'm still going to tackle PLTR, right? I'm just not going to swing it. I'm gonna try to see if I could, trade of the week on Tuesday. Definitely, we definitely need to get around two on pounds here, right? It might be today, right? We'll see. I don't want to get any, convictions. Like I said, I want to try the 130 calls on Palantir, and we got more of an extension area here, right? I love it when in pre-market session we got this extension area. So all eyes on this pre-week low here. But now when we're reading the tape here, right? Obviously, I use the Nasdaq to kind of like gauge, you know, directional moves, right? And so when I'm using the Nasdaq to like gauge these directional moves, right? I'm just like, like looking for key levels in where the market could either, like bounce or where the market could either, reject, right? So, when I'm looking for this, I'm looking for the volume nodes, right? So the Nasdaq here, and keep in mind, if you guys are looking at the NQ, just make sure you have active data, right? If you don't have active data, you will have delayed and you won't be seeing the real-time price of the Nasdaq. I look at the Nasdaq and the QQ trade hand on hand, right? The reason why I look at the Nasdaq is because it's the futures contracts, and it just gives me a little bit of more of a gauge towards where I'm at because I understand more of like the liquidity much clearer. You can look at the QQ, yeah. As you can see right here, like for the most part, like a volume node for me for the QQ. If you guys are looking at the QQ, if you're like looking to add less noise, like I like above 60, 80,000, right? So still don't see it like relatively lower volume, right? In terms of the QQQ, excuse me, on the Nasdaq, I like to see this above 300, right? So what I like to do is like I like to look at the volume node areas that's above three, so 24,730, right? So this is this 24,730 area here. 24,730 has pretty nice volume nodes, right? So use that as a key pivot, right? You can even further extend down if you see any more attractive. What I'm looking for is volume nodes above 300, right? This is, not the most attractive, but almost attractive. 296, you're off by 4. 24, 712. So you look at the extension from 74 to 712 and 24, 730, where we see the clean volume, right? But again, if the market opens above 24, 730, right? Meaning by the time the market opens at 6:30, and we do open above 24, 730, I am feeling bullish on the Nasdaq, right? Open longs, but just keep in mind that the VIX above $20 creates a higher risk trading environment. Whereas if we do enter at open, we'd have to gauge that the VIX goes below 20. But I do like the 730 area, as a key zone, right? 739. So these levels are starting to get stacked here, which is good. As long as we hold 730 at open, 24, 730, I am going to take longs right at open, right? So when you look at this, right, you're looking at the most attractive volume node levels, right? And you start to look right here, 360. Might be that 24, 693. Right, you guys see that this is the most attractive here. It has even more attractive volume nodes. So 24,693, right? Perhaps you don't want to trade right at open where you're like, no, Gus, that's, insane. 24,730, if we hold up into open, that's, I'd rather wait your 5-minute rule. I'm not taking calls at open, but I do want to wait for the market to come back to this area here where we do see higher volume nodes, right? So again, 24,693 is a key level to watch for right at open. 24,680, excuse me, right here, 24,680. This is a key gauge, right? These pre-market volumes are nice. Pre-market volume, wasn't the best in the last 2 weeks, right? But the reason why I'm showing you guys this because it's starting to look better. But this is the level 24,680, right? So I expect at one point the market to distribute back to this area 24,680. And I'm not saying that we'll bounce right off the teeth here, but when we come back to this area, you look, right? Like as you can see here, the bids and the asks are pretty stacked. Seems to be more sellers here in control here so far, but buyers are equally weighing in here. So it's like a little bit of mixed feelings would constitute more of a choppier market. To me, for bullish continuation, we need to reclaim 602.30. That's non-negotiable. If you get in before that, just keep that as your price target area. Palantir, then keep in mind that if you guys are like, pick a ticker, right? Don't get into a situation where you're getting into 2 stocks at once, right? Whereas if you're looking to get, perhaps the 605 calls on QQ or Palantir 130, just pick one. Right, don't do the both. What prevents traders also is because they overextend themselves. Markets might go up, might seem attractive to get both positions, but just pick one. Right, even if I take both positions, right, you pick one. And for the most part, I don't think beginner traders should focus on individual stocks just yet. I also like Amazon $200 calls, right? I also like Amazon $200 calls. Now, but yeah, any questions here on the tape readings? So any questions on this? So again, if the market opens above 24,730, I am looking to take calls right at open. But, keep in mind the best level, according to this tape readings, right, is this 24,680 level. Coin puts, for the most part, right, I'm not really too driven into cryptocurrency related stuff. And look at Apple. As long as Apple holds this level, we are booming. As long as the Apple holds this 262.40 level, right? Like this is a big bounce area, right? We're gonna go higher. In terms of coin, I mean, coin is pushing higher, right? At the end of the day, this is going to trade more. It said, so since they did horrible earnings. So for the most part, so I'm going to take PLTR. I'm already in Amazon. I got September, but Amazon $200 calls, if we hold up that level I discussed in the pre-market session, does look relatively good. In terms of Coinbase, right? So Coinbase trades more in confluence with Bitcoin, right? So, even if it has horrible earnings, as long as Bitcoin's up, this is going to be up too, right? So, so keep Bitcoin in mind, right? Like Bitcoin's trading at 67,200, not too attractive levels for me. And how I would see when it would be attractive is like, so I mentioned, a few weeks ago that, and I did call a top here on this one, right? Using, but 118,000, right? I was super bearish on Bitcoin and I said it was going to come back down to 58,000. No one believed me, right? Well, everyone was like skeptical, even myself, right? Trading all-time highs, would see critics saying that, this was going up to 300K. And yes, that's still kind of like well, wow, yeah, because I was looking to do a 30-time leverage short, but confluence trades, I saw rotation at the time into silver. I decided to rotate the money into silver. So we eventually came back to the plot. So whenever I give you guys levels, I expect volume at that level, right? Not necessarily if I give you a $58,000 level, it's not necessarily saying that, hey, we're gonna go lower, or we're gonna bounce there, we're gonna reject there. No, it's not that. It's just when I give you guys a level, that's where I expect volume to come in. Right. And as you guys can see here on this Bitcoin chart in a 4-hour time frame, volume definitely came in here. Right. So, in Bitcoin, this is a big demand area so far. Right. But I'm not reacting. I'm going to trust, we haven't got a clean retest of my 58,000. I'm waiting for a clean retest of my 58,000. But so far, you can draw out here that this is a clean demand area with high volume here on Bitcoin. So as long as Bitcoin holds up this base here of 64.7K, I am not shorting, right? So today's close, today's close is above 605 on QQ. But gauge the QQ more, right? Volume's looking nice, right? As you guys can see, we haven't seen this type of pre-market volume in quite a while. It looks nice. It looks nice here. This pre-market volume looks nice. Yes, correct. Okay. But let's say we start to accelerate here. Hopefully we start to accelerate here, right? But again, it's like, like let's try to take less FOMO trades, right? Like, this is more of like a FOMO trade. Palantir, these levels do, well, they don't give me like insane FOMO, but they're attractive levels, especially when you see rotation in this, right? And I just might miss it, right? I just might miss it here. If I don't see, any lucrative entries, I'm just not going to take it. But I am bullish on the sector, perhaps rolling them even more time, right? But I do like these levels, right? Like I said, I personally believe that QQQ needs to tap 618.60. Like it needs to tap. Like for us to go lower, it needs to tap this level to grab the liquidity here, right? And this is where it will grab the liquidity and bring us back down to, 592, for example, right? So that's why I was very adamant. And we were so close, I'm gonna say, right? And this is what, this is what these extension levels just got me super bullish on Palantir, which, the morning we were holding up and, yeah. And yeah, Palantir, could have stopped out and, the following day. But what happened is I had an order fill issue on my broker. So, I couldn't exit right at the morning and, yeah. So they didn't pick up the sales too fast, right? But yeah, so that's why it's always important to understand context of your pre-market levels. Like, for the most part, QQ never broke the pre-market high, which price action accelerated to the downside. So same scenario here, right? QQ definitely has to hold these pre-market highs. To me, it's 602.30, but right here, these pre-market highs definitely have to hold these after hours highs or these yesterday day highs, which yesterday day highs are not they weren't the full day high, but that's where we start to accelerate in volume, right? This is the area where we start to chop up the rest of the day. So, the key level is 605, but if we do break, the pre-market highs at 602.30, we do have room to go to that 605 area. So, and it's especially as volume starts to get even more attractive here, right? So you guys can see even more volume nodes are starting to come out and poke their heads out, right? All I care about the 730 zone, you're starting to get even more attractive here, right? And to me, if we open above 24,730, I do feel bullish. If we open up below 24,730, I'm going to be a little bit more patient for my entry. So for me to take calls right at open, we have to open up. As you guys can see here in the NASDAQ, we are currently opening, we are currently right at the 730 area. So it's like non-negotiable. If we open, in the next 8 minutes below 730, 24,730, right? I am not chasing calls. The only way I'm chasing calls right open is if we open in above 24,730. Now, the key level that I'm looking for, the extension level that I'm looking for is this area here, right? This 24,680 plot. So, that's the extension plot. You guys could draw out the extension plot, which is this 680 level here, right? So that's the extension plot. You could draw it out here. And that's where, our volume nodes next looks attractive here, the 680 plot. So, keep that area on watch. That is if we open below 730, keep this extension area here on the NASDAQ on full watch. Any questions here? Yes, I'm gonna call out all my entries. And again, the tape does look kind of stacked here. So, so yeah, it looks kind of, and if you want to correlate the 680 level here on the QQ, right? 680 level, like 597.34. You see why I don't like looking at QQ doesn't really give you an emphasis of volume just yet, right? That's why I always look using in the NASDAQ. Just gives me a better understanding of volume. And even then, like QQ, I need volume above like 80,000, right? For it to look good. But like what I like doing is more looking at the bids and the asks here. And they're pretty much stacked here. All right. But yeah, let's go ahead and let's do it. So 730 key level 680. Yeah, let's download a desktop version. That's where you can get the tape readings. I also like the Super Dom Ninja Trader. So as mentioned on Apple, Apple is definitely the key indicator today, right? Meaning that, it's, as long as Apple's trading, between these two areas, the probability of us chopping up is relatively high. If you guys want to see price go up, Apple has to hold 262.40. If you want to see price go down, Apple needs to break below 260. When you're trading in between this range, you're just expecting choppy market conditions, choppy trading conditions. Yes, so for the Amazon trade, I'm looking for us to close above 200 definitely by today. Definitely by today, we need to close above 200 for the September calls. I'm still in it and I'm looking for $200 to reclaim it. But for those ODT traders, you guys can use that $200 level as an ODT trade today, right? And again, we do need to for that trade for the Amazon trade to work, 24/7/30 has to hold up on the NASDAQ. I mean, you could, this is where you identify, your levels, right, Robert? Below $20 is more of a gauge where, keep in mind that below $20 is where the market does, a slow grind up, right? So, 20 to 30 is when price starts to accelerate here. And, because the VIX is above 20, we start to see that acceleration through the tape. And as you guys can see in the tape readings, the volume nodes are much more attractive than previous days because the VIX is above 20. So just because the VIX is above 20 doesn't necessarily mean it's super bearish market conditions. All that's telling you is that, yes, we could shoot up to 30 and create, a quick sell off. But what happens is that, if it goes from 30 back down to 18.88 or 18.22, you could get a massive spike like what happened last Friday, right? So, just confirm your levels, right? The opening range was here, 21.50. So, if you guys want to catch more rejection, it's going to be at the fill of this gap here, right? As you guys can see here in the VIX, got more of like a gap. The best area to long would be at the rejection off this 21.32 area. So just keep that level in mind, especially this morning, right? So it could align to that 680 level. We'll see. But if the VIX comes back up to 21.30, I am expecting some rejections here on the volatility index. Now, if we do open above 24,730, again, just keep in mind we have room to go here to the VIX, but if we open above 730, I'm getting some longs, which again, it's a little bit of a higher risk. Okay. A little bit of a higher risk, but yeah. We got 3 minutes. Any other questions here? So just keep Apple on watch, right? Just keep Apple on watch, 262.40. If you're, double thinking if you should get into calls or not, just make sure 262.40 holds on Apple, right? All right, so one more thing. So just to confirm relative volume on the ODTE Friday, right? Relative volume on Apple, relative volume on Cat, relative volume on, computer hardware sector. Computer hardware sector has, relative volume. So meaning that if we do bounce off, right? I would pick these I like IO and Q, this computer hardware sector and the smaller caps. If you do see price going higher, this could do really good. So, so especially because we have, relative volume here in this sector here, computer hardware. All right, let's get ready. So far 730 is holding here. If 730 holds into open, I will be targeting 602.30 on the QQQs. All right, so overall, nice prep, right? Much more things to discuss now. Things are picking up, right? This past month was like, just a little slow, not much clear moves, right? That's why, usually every month I do like, an academic program. This month, just decided to pass because I like to speak about the rotation aspect of the market. And this month, this start, hasn't been too clear here, right? So yeah. $200 calls on Amazon could work out really good too. All right, 30 seconds and 730 is holding here. So 730 holds here in this open. I am targeting 602 on the QQs. Palantir, you guys could target 130, or Amazon, you guys could target 200. 7 seconds here. Again, if best move is to wait 5 minutes. If we chase right at open, just keep in mind it's much. So waiting for a touch of 730. Watching if this level holds here. So 602 calls, pick them up 2.48 here. So again, it might be that you wait for the 680 level. It's being, much more aggressive. So it's all about 730 to hold. So it's coming to that 680 level we discussed, right? So coming to a 680 level, as we come to that level, perhaps, you guys could do some Palantir calls, right? It says if you're into 602 calls or, 605, you guys could even do the 605, but you see how price came back down to this level and it just like did a quick bounce there to that 680 plus. Usually when you involve like, individual stocks, when it starts to get you like emotional, especially when we're trading like in choppier conditions. So it's going for that retest again. Again, the VIX still has room. Keep in mind the VIX still has room to hit this 21.33 zone. Right here, right here on QQ, trailed out at 2.61. Yeah, trailed out at 2.61. Just moves happen, not too, fast. But, if you are still in it, it still looks good right here. I'm looking at Palantir right here. 130 calls, right? Swept liquidity here, right? Palantir swept liquidity from the lows here. So let's see if QQ could hold up here. So I'm watching for entries here. So I did take the at 2.61, I did take the profits on, QQ. Today I don't want to build any emotions because what put me in a bad place was building an emotional bias, right? So again, quick moves, more systemized tradings this morning, right? I am targeting 602, but I want to get clean entries. The 130 calls on Palantir look good too. I'm in Palantir 130s. I could pick them up 0.92. They're right now 1.09. So just like gauge that level, right? I was able to catch some at 0.92. So don't chase here. Definitely don't chase here. They're at 1.17 here. Yeah, yeah. Rinse it. If you guys caught anything like fast, just take profits into it. It seems like the market is getting more destabilized where we could find really good entries, right? I'm in the, 130, but Skyler, focus on SPY, QQ, and IWM, right? I want you to build that consistency just on those, right? We'll focus on individual stocks as you progress here, right? For those of you guys who haven't traded much of individual stocks or not familiar with individual stocks, please just keep risk in mind and stick with, the major indices while you guys are learning how to be able. Like this is more of a FOMO play. If we break through this opening range here on the NASDAQ, this ticker will rip, right? So I was able to catch some, 130 calls at 0.92. They're currently at 1.40 here. So price got swept here. So again, like I said, just wait for the premiums. Don't chase the premiums here. Gauge yourself where I paid for them, right? Don't chase them here. Apple's still, Apple's at this bottom range, right? So it's like Apple's definitely like, does Apple hold here? If Apple does not hold here, we have room for more downside, right? So Apple definitely has to hold 260 here, right? It's not holding it, right? So perhaps this could be an exit opportunity if you're in any type of longs, right? It's below 260, but I'm thinking it's going to get bid up. I'm going to stay in Palantir here a little bit, but just if you're in Palantir, right? If you caught an entry around mines, keep just a trail stop at break even. But Apple's more of a dangerous condition, trading below 260 here. Yeah, yeah, it's just in and out, in and out, in and out, like no emotion, especially it's a long weekend, right? Fast move feels good, right? Took profits on QQ in Palantir, an average of 0.92 here. So again, if you guys are looking for entry, look for this opening range here on Palantir. We swept liquidity from the lows. I'm targeting 130 here on Palantir, but QQ is trading more still in the choppier ranges, right? If you guys caught Palantir, please take profits into the pops, right? If you guys don't want to risk consolidation, like I said, Apple's more in a riskier zone. We have to reclaim 260 for everything to look better. More of higher risk conditions taking calls if Apple's below 260. Apple has to reclaim 260, right? We put ourselves in a scenario where it's higher risk market conditions, right? Palantir premiums, came back to 1.06. Again, QQ is holding this. You see how this 280, this 680 level we identified in the pre-market session is so strong. You see, like you could have bottom ticked this 680 area right here. It's just so strong because of the volume that's there, right? Because of the volume that's there. Good stuff, Dave. And it was Friday. It was Friday, right? It was a Friday expiration. I was like, yeah, just waited for Friday, right? But I get it. Sometimes you have FOMO, but I need us to break out of these zones. So far, it's choppier ranges here, but just faster moves. And that's what the tape confirmed for us. Just don't like the Apple's trading below 260, right? I need Apple to pick up here. And at the end of the day, remember we said we were going to long when the VIX goes to 21.36. So if you've been taking your moves, just wait for this move, right? If you took profits or whatever, like don't indulge yourself in any type of FOMO. The VIX 21.35, that's that key level that we're looking for a possible rejection there. And that's what I liked for Friday. I like to look for low risk plays, but this happened really fast. Palantir definitely came and swept, right? So it's all about holding this opening range here. But Apple needs to reclaim 260. Like for price to pick back up, Apple needs to hold 260 here. Like if you want to see a pop on QQ, has to reclaim this 600 level. Creates more of a bearish scenario as long as this is not holding 260, right? Because keep in mind that Apple is like the main ticker we're watching here this morning. Right here, the premiums are at 0.85 for Palantir. All about reclaiming 680, and we're retesting the opening range here. So again, these could be good entries here at 80 bucks here on Palantir, like, but it's a little bit higher risk here. So, so a little bit higher risk. We definitely need to pick up on Apple here. We're back at this 680 plot, right? And VIX is right here. Everything's aligning here. This is the perfect scenarios. This is the type of scenarios we like to see. I like the 602 calls here too. If we do hold up the 680 level, I'm going to just wait it out a little bit more here. Again, watching Palantir here at this opening range. So far, 680 level still keeps holding, right? 680 level keeps holding here. It's all about Apple reclaiming 260. Like if we want to see, at Palantir go up, Apple has to go back above 260. Just keep that in mind. Because at the end of the day, Apple's, broke a higher time frame support level. So, it cannot play around here. Like, this is where you should respect your stops if you're in anything, right? Because we're below that 260 plot. So it's very important that we do break past this level. So again, 680 still here. We're still at the 680 plot. Watch to see if the orders get absorbed here. The VIX lashed through that level. It's back at this opening range. So just be a little bit more cautious here. Like I said, 260 needs to reclaim here. See how because we're below 260, it just created more of a bearish scenario here on the NQ. So I'm watching for a breakout above 260 for me to, scale into Palantir here. So I took a last stat here in Palantir at 0.56. So it's all about holding 260. If Apple cannot hold 260, I will stop out of this trade here. We are going for the lows here for the pre-market. Definitely have to hold these pre-market lows. If not, we'll stop out of Palantir. Definitely have to hold these lows here. Again, VIX just loot through all these levels here. So QQ just waiting. Keep in mind that QQ does have, like I said, room to 591, but it's all about seeing if we could reject any of these plots here. I added heavier ads at 0.60 on Palantir. Average is 0.67. I was in some starters in the morning when I took the 0.92s. But not going to develop emotions here. If we don't bounce out of this area, we'll cut this trade. But watching and see if Apple holds up this 260 area. If Apple holds up 260, we will bounce. right? Particularly, you could look for the $600 calls, but Apple has to hold up 260. So a little bit of high. If you're in calls here, so in the high risk environment, we're looking for Apple and here in this third touch here to hold up this 260 level. If Apple holds up 260, the markets will bounce here. So, then if you see 260 hold up, I like the $600 calls on QQ. Not in this Q, I'm not in QQ here, but I'm playing pounds here in Confluence. All about holding 260 here. You need to stop out at 0.60. Please assess your risk to reward. 260 has not been broken here. I'm watching Palantir here have to reclaim this opening range here, which is a little bit harder conditions considering what Apple's doing, but look what the QQ is doing, right? So QQ swept these lows and it's starting to rip here, right? So $600 calls were, good move, but it's all about Apple holding up this base area. We need Apple above 260 to confirm this move to the upside. So Apple definitely needs to hold above 260 to confirm this move to the upside. If not, it's just going to be a rejection from the 680 plot, right? And the VIX has to come back down below this opening range. But in Palantir, my average on Palantir is 0.67. If you guys need to respect the stop, please do so. At the end of the day, 260, as you guys can see on Apple, is a very impactful level here. Palantir premiums at 0.77. I am up 16% here on a heavier size, but please manage your risk. So Palantir here, even the $600 calls. Anybody took those $600 calls? I'm just in Palantir because I need some money to make back. So I'm in Palantir. I haven't sold. Right here, 0.86. I'm up $1,100, 28%. I took off half of my contracts here. Still gonna leave another half here, but again, riskier conditions here. So trimmed them at 0.86. I'm up $1,200. You see how when you have no type of emotions, you just trade better, especially when you confirm volume. I trade better when there's volume. When there's no type of volume, forget about it. Gus will slip up. You get me? I'm a momentum trader. I'm a Momo trader. I like momentum. This morning, $600 calls are in the money here if you took those. I am a momentum trader. When there's no type of momentum, I'm going to get naturally trapped. You get me? So right here, the other half on Palantir here at 1.05. Right, we are going for the day high. I'm going to do a second trim here on Palantir, right? So I made back $2,380 for my $3,300 loss. This is very nice. I'm happy. So I did another trim here. Still getting out here as we are approaching in the money. Well, my exit was 1.39 here on that second trim. So leaving some runners here, just a small, 5 runners here. But yeah. Total on this profit so far is 2877.50. Boom. Right? That's how you bottom tick. That is how you bottom tick. Right? Trust me, my red days, I always get the biggest bangers the next day because I'm just like, I can't sleep. Right? When I have red days, I can't sleep. I literally genuinely cannot sleep. Like I'm up, just studying the levels, right? Just like studying the levels. But if the other, right here, Palantir is in the money and we are hitting these higher range. I'm not gonna be greedy here. I'm up $3,000 on a day at 1.76. I'm gonna trim my entire position here. I'm not gonna be greedy here. I'm gonna get all out at 1.76. I am up $3,100 on the day here. So, I was really only down 3,200, 2.09 were the exits on these last 5 runners. That's nice. 3,227.50 gains. Just made back my Palantir losses from this week. So you see how one trade could definitely make back your losses, and that's what I was just looking for today, right? It was really bothering me that I had a loss yesterday. So just made it back to today. I made money on in the QQ earlier, and I got some, yeah. But but yeah. Actually, it's all good. This is yeah. Happy Friday, everybody. By the way, this Apple did hold 260. You see what happens? You see when you get the confluence aspect of it jot down. When you get the confluence aspect of it jot down, it's like it's like impossible to fail. We were just looking for that Apple to hold 260, and if Apple held 260, but you guys saw the clear manipulation, right? You guys saw the manipulation. They wanted to bring Apple below 260 because they understand. Because again, keep in mind, we are in a positioning market and and about 90% of people will get faked out. I was one of them this week, right? Well, I got faked out because I didn't respect the level, so it's just on me. I didn't really get faked out, right? I was just asking for it, taking calls on Palantir below 618.60, right? So look at Palantir. I took profits just because I still would have been up, but yeah. Yeah, keep in mind, please remember to post your gains, right? But yeah, if anyone took the 600 calls on QQ, great. I was just focused on Palantir. I need to make back the money. I was focused on Palantir, but 600 calls, if anybody took those on QQ, those were really great too. So you guys can see tons of great moves this morning. Really great session. But any questions here? Is there any questions? So you guys see how it's different when there's volume? Like when there's no volume, it's like, like it's also programming yourself. Like don't take trades when there's no volume. This morning, I was all over the volume this morning, you know? Like I was all over the volume this morning. Like, I was all over the volume. Well, yeah, confluence works when there's volume for me, right? When there's no type of volume, it's better to just not take any trade, right? And that's why I confirm volume with the pre-market tape readings, right? There's a certain criteria that I need the volume nodes to be trading in. And as you guys can see, there was clear manipulation from that 680 level on the NASDAQ, right? As you guys can see, once we broke this area here, the market swept these lows, and that's where the dip happened, right? And you see the manipulation happened with Apple because Apple was like mixed feelings at the 260 plot. But at the end of the day, you're only going to make money in the market. Well, you could make money in the markets when there's no volume, yes, but I specialize in making money when there's actual volume in the market. When there's no volume in the market, it's just it's like okay, yesterday, right? I know how to spot volume, right? Yesterday, if you guys go to the Discord tab, right, under Gus Trades, right, you guys can see that I spotted the volume, but like in the lottos, it's there was no follow through in volume yesterday. Yesterday on the QQs, right, we spotted the pop in volume, right? This was a pop in volume, but this move didn't have follow through with volume. But yeah, but I'm not in anything here. I'm just watching, right? Palantir was good, right? Just wait for us to retest at 680. If anyone's looking for calls, just wait for 680 here. But I'm not gonna overextend myself. I'm happy I made back my Palantir loss. Yeah, I'm holding my Amazon leaps. I'm just happy I made back my Palantir loss. I made some money on QQ, not much, but I made some money on QQ. Yeah, I'm not selling my Amazon leaps. That's I have till September. If Amazon goes lower, I'll buy more. This time around, I only bought 5 contracts in comparison to the 10 contracts I had initially gotten. So the reason why was because, on my swing account, which is, where I traded these Palantir calls, I gave back the Amazon gains from last week. So, it's a bummer. But yeah, made them back and yeah. So we're coming back to that 780 plot. If anyone wants to test that level, like I said, I like the 602 calls. So I'm waiting for 780 to come. At that level, I like the 602 calls on QQ. Apple's still not holding 260 here though. But I wouldn't take a trade after 7:15 today. The reason why I wouldn't take a trade after 7:15 a.m. is because, like it is a long weekend this week. So, FYI, the markets are closed Monday, so we get an extra day to sleep in. But because the markets are closed on Monday, you know, um, it's just I always expect slower volume. So right here is where you guys could try. right? So, hard stop below 680. So I'm gonna wait for a retest of 680, and I'm gonna be looking for some QQQ entries here. I like the 602s at 2.17. I took those earlier, but just keep in mind premiums are a bit juiced here on those. You see why you take profits on Palantir? So I like the 602 calls. I just don't like they're juiced, right? But I took those. Those are at 2.31 here. Let's see if we hold. 2.55. Nice. You guys see that bounce from that retest? I'm making some more money here on QQQ. All right, let's see if we hold up here. Again, if we fell volume here, I'm going to take my profits. They're at 2.80 here. My entry was 2.17. VIX needs to fade here. You guys could even target the 605 call. It's just a little bit out of the money here. We definitely need to slash out of this opening range, but you guys can see the choppier ranges on the NQ is this opening range and this key support area here at 680. So, these premiums are juiced, and something's telling me here to, take profits at 2.72. I'm all out at 2.72. Again, these could run, but it's just, I'm not too a fan of trading these expensive contracts. So I took them off at 2.72. I'm not too a fan of, trading these contracts kind of like expensive, right? Premiums are definitely juiced. I'd wait for pullbacks and add at pullbacks if you guys are, with a bullish bias, but I took profits at 2.72 on those QQ calls. I still think we will get there, right? But I just don't want to risk those expensive contracts, right? So, just wait for this pop. Like if you're still in them, right, just wait for these pops and take them off. But I took it off. We could go higher, right? So just assess the risk to reward. Ideally, we wanted to see the VIX below the opening range, but yeah, made another you know, $700, well, $650 here on QQ. But they're at 3.04 here. That was a nice move. Any questions here? These are nice moves. This is exactly what we were waiting for, right? But you got to react. We're trading in a tighter range, and yeah. And sometimes when you're in swing trades, it definitely skews your bias. Like like when you're in a swing trade, that's what puts you in a bad spot. So if you're a beginner trader, don't focus too much on swing trading. It'll eventually come, right? Yeah, some of my best trades have came from swing trading, right? But also, I've had some really great trades. Also, day trading. Just keep in mind the swing trades usually are bigger. Day trading, like, when I used to like make 80K in a day trading, right? Just was trading with a crazier amount of size, right? Whereas, to make 80K swing trading is a little bit, less of a headache than doing that. I also took off the calls because the UVXY is still holding this opening range here. I just don't want to force price here either. I like getting more in calls at 608, right? So I'd rather wait for price to naturally come back down to its core support and see if we could find some re-entries on the calls. This market ain't faking me out today. Trust me. So QQ premiums back at 2.42. Anybody re-entering here? Anybody's tempted to re-enter here? Anybody's looking for 605 calls here? And let's actually see. No, but I'm not taking in just yet. 602 is okay. I'm waiting for six. I want to see perfect touch of 680. I don't like to chase this here. Like for me to enter, I need to see 680, right? So don't chase automatically here, right? Wait for 680. That's our pivot. If you're in it before that, great. You just assess the risk, right? I'm personally gonna enter at 680. Only A plus executions this morning. You got to move fast at this type of when momentum picks up, you got to move fast. So we're here at 680. 605 calls seem like the best move. We do hold this area. I'm watching to see if the VIX can reject here. But this is a great spot to take calls. You guys see how the 680 level from the pre-market is just like a very attractive zone. Again, I would love to see exhaustion on the VIX before I get out of the money plays, but I'm in some starters at 605 at an average of 1.09 here. But a little bit on the higher risk side, as mentioned, just because I would like, one characteristic that I would need is the VIX to accelerate fast to downside, right? So it needs to reject fast. Still hasn't done it. You have more success trying to like get into the out of money calls when this rejects fast. We know there's a course of support here at 680, right? So you guys can see that's like the bounce area. If you're not seeing that fast move, please assess your risk here as these calls are at break even. And I have a starter size, very small size. And these are kind of juice too, yeah. But let's see if we bounce out of this area. Again, Apple needs to go back above 260 for this trade to work. And the VIX needs to like move faster to the downside here. It still hasn't moved fast enough to the downside for this to be like an A plus trade. I got stopped out of this one 1.16. I mean, it looks good, right? But I just don't want to risk my profits, right? I'm happy I made, I'm happy I got out of this one as 1.16. These look good though. Like I don't want to stop you out if you've got a good entry. The reason why I stopped out is because I don't want to risk my profits on day. But feels good to make back the Palantir loss and be up on QQ. So I don't want to expose that going into 7:15 time. But yes, these look good if you guys are in it. Like I kind of like, I kind of like weak-handed them here. But yeah, I mean, wow. Anyone still in? Wow. I definitely that's the definition of fumbling a play. But after you have two wins and well theoretically it was 3 wins because I had a win on QQ, just a smaller position this morning, right? And then a second win PLTR and a third win on QQ again, and then this fourth win here on QQ, but I fumbled it. But I took it like but yeah, no, well, yeah, that level is like again, Ryan, look, Ryan, I know exactly what you're looking for. Okay. You've been here long enough. If you guys be here long enough, I will know you guys individually. I will help you guys. I will, just know I have losses too. Okay. There's no one that's perfect in the skill set. I just play more aggressive. Like at the end of the day, like I wasn't worried about being down 3,300. It's within my risk management. If anything, yes, the only rule that I broke is I never like being more down than $2,000 in options, but it happens still. It's gonna happen. But in reality, Ryan, what you're looking for is a momentum driven market. So, in the pre-market tape, if you don't see any type of momentum in the morning, don't get indulged to trade. Trade only when momentum is there. You get what I'm saying? Like you don't need to trade every day. And you could watch the market, you could tune into them. And if there's lower volume, just, like just fight the urgency to get into a trade. But as you can see, we're having more success because there was actual volume in the pre-market session. No, yeah, I like the 602 calls. I just fumbled the ball on those. I mean, I still exited with profit. My average was 1.09. I exited at 1.16. But, I don't want to risk my profits on day today. That's a really good strategy, Ricardo. I like that. I like that. Yeah, the 605s. The 605s, no, I had this, yeah, the 605, not 602s. The 605s are at 1.35 from my average of 1.09, but I took those off at 1.16. The 602s are at 2.54. I took those off at 2.72. So we killed it this morning. We good? Yeah, no, when the market moves fast, that's my thing, right? Market moves fast. When the market chops up, that's where you see me all sad. You just see me in the like all sad with my head down, like all sad. But yeah, I took those off. I'm not in anything. The VIX still doesn't look like it's decelerating. Maybe if we come back to 680 again, but I don't want to risk my gains today. Like I said, I'm super happy that I made back the loss on Palantir. And plus I made some money on QQ, but no emotion driven trades, right? In and out. Like I had no type of emotions this morning. The moment when you involved emotions is when you're exposing yourself, right? Because the thing is that you're reacting more of like what you think rather than what the market is telling you, right? No, yeah, if we get above if we get above 604, if we get above 604.80, that's it. Like, welcome back, Luke. Luke, I need you, like I want, trade when there's actual pre-market volume, okay? I get it, like you're trying to overextend yourself, but it's part of the losses people have to take to actually, understand the type of trader they are, right? Um, TOS, yes, I trade with Thinkorswim. I use the mobile app for futures. So I use the mobile app, but I like to, show you guys the desktop version of the tape readings. But I also on my other screen here while I'm like looking at it, I have Ninja Trader. So I like using the Super Dom with Ninja Trader, but on TOS it's more than enough, right? Sufficient to watch the tape. Now, I personally fill options with my phone, right? But when I trade futures, I like to be in a desktop. I trade futures with a desktop better. I trade options with my phone. I have just a phone just for trading options. You have more of a remote because the option premiums is just not too it's you could be off like by $1, and if we bounce right away, you won't even feel it, right? Instead of buying the premiums, you sell them. If you guys are in calls, right? Just watch for the opening range to fail on the VIX here. So if you guys want to see higher, I'm not in anything here. I took profits on everything, but if you guys want to see higher here, the VIX, this is like non-negotiable. The VIX has to go back below this area. I'm not in anything. I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm going to trade past 7:15 a.m. FYI, keep in mind it's a long weekend, and and we still made money and good money in these tighter ranges, right? Because I just feel comfortable getting into positions when there's actual volume, right? Like there's volume here, right? When there's volume, I just naturally feel comfortable getting in positions, right? But I actually think that intraday volume will die down, right? Intraday, I think volume will dial down. The primary fact is that we have a long weekend, and just from personal experience, and it might be that today does disregards that. There's just an immense amount of FOMO. No one cares about President's Day, and everyone's just like there's this skyrocketed volume intraday. But I'm not willing to take that gamble today. Just from my personal experience, intraday usually has lower volume. But yeah, these ranges are great. This volume is great. But, I am also forward thinking here that, we have President's Day on Monday. It's a long weekend, and the markets could slow down real fast as well here. So I don't want to put myself in a deja vu moment from yesterday. Yeah, we'll do power hour. I think power hour would be better than intraday session, but I might be wrong, right? Intraday session might be good. I don't know if you're in calls here. I don't want to discourage you, but just keep in mind that Apple definitely does need to get above 260. You put yourself in a higher risk trading environment, the more Apple's below 260, but also the opening range here, right? The VIX's opening range here needs to fail. Like for us to go higher here, the VIX needs to fail here. So let's watch this here. I'm personally done. I'm not going to take any trades here. I took 4 successful trades this morning, and I really do not want to give back anything this morning. It's been one hell of a week. Today's definitely going to be a Matt Gallen type of night. Matt Gallen. For reals. It literally happened. What happened to me last week, right? On Thursday, I got super bullish intraday, and and the move happened Friday. Like literally the same thing that happened to me. Like that's why I say it's a deja vu moment. I could have just waited for Friday, and that's why like don't swing, right? Just take me for an example, right? It's like don't swing anything with short-term expirations. I'm swinging Amazon $200 calls. So again, I hear QQ's breaking higher here. Yeah, no, I'm ready to go to the gym right now. I'm happy. QQ, those 605s are at 1.40 here. I'm glad it's still 602. You see how premium just burning right here? They're 2.68, 2.79. I sold at 2.72. But the 605s are 1.50 if you guys are still in the 605s. But these are great spots to take profits. But like as mentioned, if we lose the opening range, pop price like that. It's definitely happened, right? We lost the opening range and price popped. So you're not taking profits here. I don't know what to tell you. But if you are looking for the hyper extension, next level we need to clear is this 840 zone here on the Nasdaq. So we definitely need to clear this area here if you do want to see more extensions, more to the upside. But I'm all done here. I'm not gonna force. Like I said, I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm gonna trade after 7:15 a.m. It might pay, right? But I really don't care. Like I'm happy this morning. Like I'm genuinely happy this morning, right? But yeah, this is it looks like the QQ is coming to this 840 zone. So if you're in the 615s, definitely anyone in the 615s in the audience, or excuse me, the 605s or 605s are 1.55. The average on mine for me was 1.09 on those. Yeah, no, I was all set this morning. I was just like, yeah, I'm also whenever I take losses, like I mean, I don't take losses every day, right? But like whenever, on average I take like about 3, 4 losses a month, right? But when I do take a loss, it's just, like when the market's closed, I don't know. And even though they're not like big losses, it's just, I don't know, it just makes you want to be better. It makes you want to actually follow your rules. It makes you actually, want to be a better trader. So we are targeting the opening range. If you guys are holding calls here, please manage your risk here, okay? If you guys can leave runners, can afford runners here, can, risk profits, by all means have a risk management plan. But yeah, if we do hold up 602.30 here, 602.40, next stop is 605 here. If we hold it up, the only difference, pop quiz. What is the difference here? Pop quiz. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Whoever gets this right wins a $50,000 evaluation account and gets to trade it with me. What's the only difference here? What is the only difference here? Correct. Aziz, come on. Aziz won. Aziz, let's get you on that funded account next week. We're going to start trading futures next week, okay? All right. Congrats, Aziz. But yes, volume. Volume. It's volume. We're lacking volume. You see how volume died down here? So if you're holding, you put yourself in a situation where you're guessing for volume to pick up here. So, so far it's coming out to what I said that intraday we're going to go, well, the VIX is below the opening range, but still above $20. Still kind of like riskier, right? But if the VIX does go below $20, oh my, we're going to rip. If the VIX goes, if you're in calls here and the VIX does go below $20, right? If the VIX does go below $20, price is going to rip. Price is going to rip if the VIX goes below $20. But I would first focus on this opening range on NASDAQ. We're still not there yet. We definitely need to open above this, opening range earlier. And these are, I would say these are like, my favorite setups. When we swept liquidity from the high, we come back down. As you guys can see, we swept liquidity from the high. We came back down. We swept liquidity from the low. But now what's happening here is that this is the second retest, right? I don't like second retests, but they have been pretty successful lately. But I like third retests, right? Meaning that when price retests his opening range today on the day for the third time, that'll be my most attractive area. I call it the glass effect. Second reentries do work, yes, right? I'm not a fan of them. Right. I have students in where they gave me their perspective on why they're a fan of them, but I'm not a fan of second retest. Just me. It's, more, I call it the glass effect, right? So again, I'm not a fan of, I would take profits here, but I get it. If we do break past this level, markets could rip. This is the key level. This is like the final boss area, 602.30. And this was in reality my entry on some QQ lottos yesterday when we hit price at this level. But like I said, I'm not a fan of second retests. I'm a fan of third retests. And I'm not in anything here, right? I'm like, I'm just in my $200 calls on Amazon for September. All right, guys. But any questions here? All right. So I am all done here. Great session today. Lots of big moves. Again, just a reminder, right? If you guys want to do the style trading that I do with momentum trading, keep in mind you'll have more success when there's actual volume. Today's the first day, right? Today's the first day. Well, QQ did touch 602, right? QQ did touch actually went higher, right? So that's why I said take profits as it pops. I don't like the second retest. So just wait for this third retest. This is where if price pops above the second, third retest, that's where I like to break out. But going back to the volume, right? Like, today I like when the markets have volume. And today was the first day that I've seen in quite a minute that we saw some pickup in volume. I haven't seen this type of volume since I'm not gonna kid you, like, since December. So it's yeah. We definitely picking up market. This is the part where the markets are going to start getting volatile. Volume just confirmed it today, right? Definitely a lot of people got shakeout and a lot of money's starting to get active here. But, I'm not looking to force a trade here. I'm happy with my gains. Like I said, the market's just choppy, right? As you guys can see from its opening range and the 680 level, right? Market's just choppy. I would see it, right? Is that QQ just trading from 598.80 to this high here at 603. But not looking to chase. I'm all done here. But thank you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the session. Hope you got a lot of value from this session. Again, I'm a volume trader. I like when the markets have momentum. I like it when they have and I'm in and out. I'm in and out. I'm negotiable. I have no bias, right? Yeah, no, you had to be super fast with your entries today. Like this is a fast market. This is the market I love. Like this is where, this is where I recommend not using your phones, right? If you don't have experience with the limit fills or navigating the app really fast, this is where I say that you should really use the, TOS desktop version. And using your, Bill Fanter does a great job in, showing you guys how to do the bid and the asks, like, and getting them, sniping in your entries with the TOS platform. So, so for those of you guys who are desktop traders, um, you know, for those of you guys who are desktop traders on a TOS platform, please, and you're executing trades fast on the TOS, trying to keep up with the momentum trading, because this is going to be the flow of the market from February, and it's going to go up until, May, going into the early summer, right? So markets are going to pick up fast here from this point. I just needed today to confirm it. We confirmed it with volume. So keep in mind, like, if you need to strategize and where the phone's not working for you, or you need to do your TOS desktop version, learn to fill the orders fast. Bill Fanter's curriculum does a great job on showing you guys how to be able to enter and exit really fast. All right. But other than that, guys, I appreciate y'all for tuning in. This does conclude our session today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Great day. Out of four trades. Again, I do better when there's actual momentum. The reason why I'm not chasing this here, no follow through in volume. I'm not gonna, like, even if there's volume later on, I don't care. Like, I really do not care. I'm not gonna put myself in a situation. I'll be back for power hour, but I'm not gonna put myself in a situation where I'm trading midday on low volume market conditions, because it's gonna be a long weekend. But yeah, if you guys are still looking for it, look for a breakout above this opening range. But thank you guys. Volume's definitely going to pick up. We're going to get these fast moves. Futures traders, this is like the most attractive market, right? So again, so just, you got to be super snipe mode, and we confirm our levels through the tape readings. Thank you guys, and I hope you guys all have a great holiday weekend. Enjoy your long weekend. Pre-week prep will begin on Monday, but thank y'all.